Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. So, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening from wherever you are based right now. I am Nicole, your host for today's webinar. All right. So, a few things about myself before we get started. I am actually the current ASEAN Youth Organization chairperson for the Philippines chapter. And again, I am here to be your host for this today's webinar. All right. So, before we begin with today's webinar, if you have any questions about the topic today, or the discussion, please do not hesitate to send us a question or to send us through via comments down in any of the social media platforms that you're watching on, and we will be getting back to your question after the guest speakers have spoken. All right, so welcome to the live webinar series of ESME.ph, an e-learning marketplace for Filipino professionals where one can develop relevant and in-demand skills through master classes in different fields of learning. So if you want to learn more about us, feel free to visit our page at www.esme.ph. So for those who are watching on Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn, feel free to share the link to the stream to the people who you think will be interested or in today's topic, or to just share it on your social media platform so that everybody can join in the fun. All right. So again, also this webinar is in partnership with the ASEAN Youth Organization, an ASEAN approved nonprofit organization that spreads awareness of ASEAN to over 200 million young people here in the Southeast Asia. And of course, this webinar is also brought to you by the Rotary Club of Alabang Madrigal Business Park. All right, so thank you to our lovely partners for helping us with this event. So for today, we have a very interesting and exciting topic to discuss. It is all about learning the processes and procedures of getting a green card through the EB5. In today's generation, a lot of Filipinos are actually thinking about migrating to the US, increasing factors of getting a high-paying job or starting a new life. But not only are the people getting benefits from being a migrant, the country is also gaining a lot of possibilities in economic migration. Since then, they came up with the EB5 to make it much more simpler and an easier way for immigrants to live in the United States. So, for us to be able to walk through the processes and procedures of being a resident in the US through the EB5 program, let us welcome our esteemed guests who have taken time out of their busy schedules to share with us their insights and their knowledge about the program. All right, so first off, let us welcome the CEO of America EB5 Visa, Mr. Marko Issever. And then, there we go. Hello, Sir Marko. All
Hi,
right, so
how are you doing?
hello.
Nice to be here.
Hello there. All right, so next
Thank
is
you
a
for
partner.
inviting me to speak. Thank you.
All right. So next is a partner of SKT Law PC and a representative of multinational clients in all aspects of U.S. immigration, Mr. Eliot Krieger. Hello, Mr. Eliot.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you
Good
for having
morning
me.
from where you are. Good evening from where you are. so
Yes, thank you.
third, so third is representing the Philippines, a Filipina, a real estate broker, and an EB5 consultant, Miss Pam Pfeil. Hello, Miss Pam.
Hi, good morning. Good
Good
morning to our
morning.
viewers. Thank you,
Good,
Isley.
good evening, right there. And of course, lastly, the Vice President of the U.S. Philippines Commerce and Industry Agency and the VP of Federation of Philippine American Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Rick Pfeil. Hello, Mr. Rick. How are you doing?
Hello,
Hi
good morning to you
there.
all.
Good morning, good morning. So, to kickstart off this webinar, this event, maybe we can have a brief introduction of each of our speakers. So, we can start with Sir Marco. Hello there.
Hi, actually, wonderful to be with you. I am the founder, CEO of America AB5 Visa, a company that has its mission to connect international investors who aim to immigrate to the United States with EB5 issuers. Um, Prior to this, I was with Bank of New York Mellon for 18 years. I used to run the derivative desk there. And prior to that, I was with Prudential. I've been on Wall Street over 35 years. And I'm very excited to be here this morning with you to explain about EB5, how we can make what might be called the dream a reality. Thank you.
All right, so thank you for that, Sir Marco. Maybe we can have Sir Eliot next to introduce himself.
Thank you very much, Isley. I'm Eliot Krieger, partner at SKT Law. I'm actually sitting in the Los Angeles area where it's evening. My background, I have a PhD in philosophy. I then went to Harvard Law School. After Harvard, I practiced in big law firms in Los Angeles. And then I went to work for the Department of Justice through the U.S. Attorney's Office in Los Angeles. And there I headed the Immigration Fraud Task Force for all of Southern California, and prosecuted and oversaw immigration fraud, frankly. And I saw much of immigration fraud directed toward Filipinos. That was my first introduction to the Philippines, as a matter of fact. After I left the U.S. government, I started my own firm. This was about 15 years ago. And I was determined when I started my own firm that I would do it right, because I saw all the pain that happens when people get involved with immigration attorneys and professionals that don't do it right. And so I started the firm about 15 years ago. We have offices in California, obviously. I have deep connections in the Philippines. I have an office in Ortigas and have represented Filipinos for probably 20 years now. And we also have an office in Vietnam. The topic of this conversation is going to be about EB5. EB5 is extremely popular in Vietnam. Our office, SKT Law, represents probably 25 to 30% of all of the EB5 visas coming out of Vietnam right now. And so we're very experienced. We've done hundreds of EB5 petitions. EB5, interestingly, is something that has not been very popular in the Philippines. And I think it's a great program that can really benefit Filipinos who want a relatively easy way, if they have the means for it, to get a green card for the United States. And I look forward to talking about it.
All right, so thank you for that, and we're looking forward to learn so much from you. So next is Miss Pam, our Filipina, our fellow kababayan.
Hi, thank you, Isley. Good morning or good evening to all of our viewers this morning. My name is Pamela Pfeil. I am the EB5 Visa Country Manager to the Philippines, and I am also a real estate professional based in Metro Manila. I travel to US often for business in collaboration with both American Chambers of Commerce and the Philippine Chambers of Commerce and Industry. I work with investors and families that want to immigrate to the United States. Most of the clients that I work with are real estate investors, and that they want to send their kids to the US to study in prestigious schools such as Harvard, Stanford, Yale, and the like. So some clients that I come across with are also just families who wanted to immigrate and get their permanent residency the fastest way that they can, and that is EB5 visa. And since I am based in Metro Manila, I work closely with them and see to it that they are well assisted with their concerns. Thank you.
All right, so thank you for that, Miss Pam. And of course, our last but not the least a speaker for today. So Sir Rick, maybe you'd like to give a brief introduction of yourself as well.
Yes, thank you, and good morning to everyone. My name is Rick Pfeil, and as mentioned, I'm the Vice President of the U.S. Philippines Commerce and Industry Agency, as well as the VP of the Filipino American Chambers of Commerce. I started out as an MBA in finance and then became a professor of corporate finance before moving into the corporate world as a consultant and an analyst. Since then, moving into the Philippines, my practice now is basically connecting U.S. corporations and entrepreneurs with Filipino businesses and entrepreneurs. So as a international trade specialist and commerce specialist. So that's my role. So I see a lot of the discussions here more from a business perspective and a commerce perspective, and so that's the angle that I'll be commenting on in this conference. Thank you.
All right, so thank you for all of that, and thank you for introducing yourselves. I hope that to whoever is watching this, to all our viewers, I hope that you get to be enlightened with the discussion and topic for today. Again, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to leave a comment down below in the comment sections of the social media platform that you are watching this for. So let's rewind a little bit before we look at the current, right? So maybe somebody can explain, or maybe Sir Marko, as the American EB5 CEO, maybe you'd like to describe the basic features of the EB5 program, especially for our viewers who don't really know what it is.
Absolutely. The EB5 program really dates back to 1990, 30 years ago, when the country was really going through a tremendous economic depression, and they needed to come up with a formula to create job creation and capital investment. And they came up with the EB5, where the foreign investor would come in here and invest either directly in their own project or through a third party to somebody else's project. At the time, the investment amount was basically two kinds. If the investment would be made in a what we call a targeted employment area, defined to be a high unemployment area or a rural area, it was $500,000. And if the investment would be made in an urban area, like a city like Miami, Los Angeles, New York, Chicago kind of metro city, then it would be 1 million. Last year in November, the government, through regulation, changed these amounts from 500,000 to 900,000 for the target employment area, and from 1 million to 1.8 million for the urban area investments. And in the EB5, as we said, since the main purpose of it is to create jobs, the investors are required to create a minimum of 10 full-time U.S. jobs. If they do this on a direct basis, in other words, open up their own business in here, they will be creating these jobs themselves. The responsibility will be themselves. And a foreigner, obviously, who doesn't know the ins and outs of running a business in the U.S. yet, would find that pretty difficult. Therefore, 95%, if not more, of EB5 investments are done what we call through a regional center, which is authorized by the by the U.S. government. It's official to raise EB5 funds. They, in turn, take the money from the investors and lend it to developers. Sometimes the regional center and the developer are sister companies. So the job creation responsibility shifts from the investor, therefore, to the regional center. So therefore, it's really much easier to go to the regional center method. When you apply for an EB5, you're looking into today between 2 to 3 years to get your conditional green card. And then after 5-6 years, you get your permanent residency. The nice thing about this application is that it's not only for one person, in other words, the applicant, the investor, but at the same time, if the applicant is, let's say, the husband or the wife or the mother or the father, themselves, as well as all their children who are younger than 21 years old and unmarried, can be processed under one application. So it makes a lot of sense. In terms of the quotas, there are 10,000 immigrant visas that are awarded on a yearly basis. We assume that there are two or three, let's say three or four people in a family, in an applicant's family, then that really translates to roughly 2,500, 3,000 applications per year. The initial green card, this conditional green card that you get from EB5, is valid for 2 years. After that 2 years, there is a 2-year period where you are expected to reside in the United States. But if you don't, there are ways to be overseas. And then after this 2-year period is finished, is fulfilled 90 days before that, your attorney, your immigration attorney, can file for converting your conditional green card into a permanent green card. We will talk about later this morning exactly how the timeline goes. So if you have any questions about the ins and outs about this process, I hope then it will be addressed and explained. Thank you, Isley.
All right, so thank you for that sharing of yours of what the EB5 really is. So again, we'll be dwelling into a lot of things. So hopefully the watchers will stay tuned to our webinar. So after discussing the basic features, maybe we can also hear about the advantages of actually obtaining the green card through the EB5 program, especially since a lot of Filipinos are interested in settling into the United States permanently. And of course, there are some of our fellow Filipinos already there in the United States who want to really take advantage of their green cards. So, yes. Sir Eliot, would you like to? Would you, Miss Pam, would you like to put more into that? Put more emphasis into that?
So actually, there are 5 advantages to obtaining green cards through EB5 visa. So first, it is the fastest option of getting U.S. permanent resident status. So there's no quota backlogs. So quota backlogs, for the benefit of our viewers, it means limit on how many visas may be issued to each country. So far for the Philippines, we don't have that problem. In fact, we need more application from the Philippines. So second would be the freedom to study, work, and live in the United States without additional immigration requirements for you and the derivative applicants, meaning the spouse and unmarried children in the family under 21 years old. Third, it can also reduce in-state tuition for the children's university education. So in the United States, international students pay in-state tuition, which is quite higher than what an American student pays for. So instead of paying a higher tuition, why not obtain EB5 visa? You obtain permanent residency, and you also pay the same tuition fees as an American student would do. Fourth, no need for outside sponsorship, unlike other visa application. And fifth, the potential for U.S. citizenship 5 years after your initial entry into the U.S. So those are the advantages of obtaining EB5 visa.
All right, so thank you for that. So again, these are the 5 advantages of the for obtaining a green card. But of course, a lot of our viewers are actually students. A lot of them are the youth. So especially myself, the host, I'm actually a student or still studying in college. So maybe we can hear about the advantages of a student specifically of gaining the EB5 visa, and of course maybe the job opportunities and salary delta points, especially for someone like me who's a senior and who wants to graduate with a lot of job opportunities ahead of myself or everybody watching here. So Sir Rick, would you like to take it away?
Sure. Yeah, I think what I would like to do is just add an extra one onto the list that Pam just shared. So she had a list of 5, and I think I can just add a 6th one. And basically, if you think about it, if you're going to be spending all of this money on tuition in the United States, going to a U.S. university, then just from a practical perspective, you may want to consider the EB5 program, because after you graduate, you would be able to stay in the U.S. and earn a much higher income in your career, in your field of choice, in the United States. So if you're going to be paying, the high U.S. tuition rates, then you may as well earn the high U.S. Salary rates. So I think that's probably one of the things to consider, is that with this program, if you start it early enough, say your freshman year in college, that by the time that you graduate, you might be in a good position to go ahead and have a card that would allow you to stay in the United States. And then you don't have to really be sponsored by your employer. You already, have a legal green card. So anyway, that's my economic perspective and my sixth bullet point to add on to Pam's list.
All right, so thank you for that. So hopefully for those who are watching, especially for those freshmen or sophomore, maybe you'd like to consider this program for, again, a lot more job opportunities in the United States. So thank you for that. So now that we've talked about what it is and the advantages of obtaining the green card, what exactly is the exact timeline? Maybe Sir Eliot would like to also explain the process that it takes, how long is it usually, and if it has increased or even decreased in the last couple of years. Sir, you're muted. All right. It seems as though Sir Eliot is a bit muted right now. So hi, sir. Hello. Hi there. It's all right.
Okay, now I can be heard. What I was saying when nobody could hear me was that in front of you is the timeline for EB5. Marko was talking about a lot of the details of the process, but I can kind of simplify it for all of you. If you have the financial resources to make this kind of investment and get a visa in this way, outside of working with your attorneys to do source of funds, which I'll talk about in a little bit, essentially, if you can write the check, you can get your green card. And this is the process that allows you to do it. In the first stage, you're going to work with me, my firm, with Marko. You're going to pick a regional center project to invest in. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And importantly, you're going to go through with your attorney and determine how to source the funds. Where's the money coming from? And we have to justify that it's coming from a legitimate source. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. That process, depending upon how involved it is, can take anywhere from 2 weeks to 3 months, depending upon how difficult it is. In some cases, the money's already in the United States and easy to trace, and we can do that rather quickly. In some cases, we have to come up with some inventive things to try to figure out how to do source of funds. But that's the beginning part. And you're also choosing your project. You're working with Marko. You're trying to figure out what you want to make the investment in. Then we file your I-526. And once we file the I-526, you will have made your investment and you'll get your priority date, which is the date in which you file, and then you wait to get the approval. Up until COVID hit, the approvals, at least in our office, were coming somewhere between 12 months and 24 months. The US government is now saying you can bump that up to 46 to 75 months. For reasons that I'll explain later. Filipinos will never be on the higher end of that because they have no retrogression, and so their petitions will be reviewed first. And I think that is overly pessimistic. In fact, with COVID, EB5 petitions have slowed up considerably. So I think that it's going to be longer than it has been at the 12 to 24 months, but I don't think it's going to be that much longer than it has been. And then you get your approval, and once you get your approval, if you're in the United States and a student, you file for changing your status from student visa to the green card. If you're in the Philippines, through a process, you ultimately end up in an interview at the U.S. Embassy in Manila. Probably 98% of interviewees pass the EB5 interview, because by the time you get to the interview, you've already been approved and they already know you've made this investment, and no one's going to prevent you from going to the United States at that point. That process after the approval takes 3 to 8 months. Again, in the Philippines, it should be relatively quick. And then you have your temporary green card. That lasts for 2 years. Then the reality is the temporary green card, the 2-year green card, has all the rights and privileges of a permanent green card. The only difference is after 2 years, and this is just something your attorneys have to deal with. You're busy living your life, but we all, 3 months prior to the 2-year anniversary, we have to file a whole bunch of things, primarily from your regional center, that says, you know, that investment you made where you promised 10 jobs and you promised all these, that this project would be made, the hotel would be built, the apartments would be built, whatever it is. We have to tell the government all that stuff really happened. And if you go with a good regional center, that's not really going to be an issue. We file the paperwork, and then about a year or so later, you get your permanent green card. The permanent green card is renewable forever. And if you stay in the United States more than half the time over a 5-year period, you can get your citizenship at that point. So the whole process from, you know, meeting us the first time and saying, I want to do this, to, you know, getting your permanent green card for the Philippines is probably going to be 5-6 years, something like that. And remember, the investment you make is, I always think about it as more like a loan, because you give the money to the regional center, and then at the end of this process, you get your money back if you invest in a good regional center. So that's a basic timeline for EB5.
All right, so thank you for that. So that's a really dwelled in and very detailed process of the timeline. So that's the current situation right now with everything that's been happening with the processing of the EB5 visa. But has there been any type of developments, new developments in the EB5 market that could hopefully shorten the time frame that Sir Eliot has mentioned? Yes, so Sir Marko, has there been any new news about that?
Yes, I'd like to touch upon, actually, Eliot mentioned it briefly. I would like to mention at least a couple here. Those of you who are familiar from the accounting, there is a concept called first in, first out. The first application, the first filed application gets first processed first. So this was really the method from the beginning of the program until end of March this year. And the problem with that approach was that because from countries like China, really China, and to some extent Vietnam, where there is a backlog, even though the people from those countries have applied way before, let's say, a Filipino who's interested in applying today, and their application would be reviewed and in fact approved, they wouldn't be able to move forward to the green card process that Eliot just described. Now, those approvals would be essentially be wasted. So the USCIS, the government decided that instead of reviewing the files of citizens of countries where there is what we call, the technical term is retrogression, where there is retrogression, meaning backlog, they would be looking into countries where there is none, like Philippines. So because of this, we believe that there will be a significant time the time to process is going to be shortened. In other words, the 526s will be reviewed much sooner instead of waiting, those really out of the range 74.5 months. I mean, what we showed in the slide before here, we said 46 to 74 months. Those are expected to go back to the way it used to be, like 2 or 3 years ago, probably 12 to maybe 20 months. So that's the first reason. The second is really COVID. I want to make a plug to a article I I wrote about silver lining about COVID. When people talk about COVID, and they should, there's really no good that came out of this, except for EB5, there has actually been some kind of a silver lining. And one of them is really the fact that all the US consulates, as you must know, were closed during the COVID pandemic. So therefore, what would have been a green card through a family-based application, so for example, a spouse, an American citizen spouse sponsoring their spouse, husband, wife for husband, or children sponsoring their parents, all those green cards are not going to be processed. So this year, the expectation is that there might be 50,000 or maybe even more green cards that would have been processed through family. They are going to be moving to business visas, the EB1s, EB2s, and of course EB5. EB5 is supposed to take 7.1% of that. So even if 50,000, we're talking about 3,500 visas coming in, or green cards coming in from the family base to EB5. So these are just two reasons why we believe that there could be some, maybe significant, really, shortening of the processing time. Thank you, Ashley.
All right, so thank you for that. So hopefully, a lot of our watchers understand now that it's easier for us here in the Philippines to get the EB5 visa and to be part of the program. All right, so next, that was on the consumer side of the EB5 program, right? So maybe we can delve into the more investor side. So maybe we can have Sir Eliot maybe explain the various methods that investors might decide to use their funds for their EB5 investment. Maybe explain further on what challenges they may face with the source of funds, or should they even get funds here in the Philippines or there in the US, or maybe even overseas, or should a lot of people, especially here in the Philippines, would use installment programs. So is that something that they should consider? Should they deposit it all at once, or is it something that we can do at an installment basis? Yes.
Okay, thank you. Starting with your last questions, no, it cannot be installments. You need to come up with the money prior to the filing of the application. And it's a lot of money. It was $500,000 for so many years, and then last year it went up to $900,000 as the minimum investment, which is, not insignificant. We do a lot of them, and I would say more than half the money is coming from real estate. What happens is for the funding of the EB5 project, the 900,000 or the 1.8 million, but most people are going to invest in a $900,000 project. The U.S. government cares where the money comes from. You have to demonstrate that it comes from a legitimate source. Real estate can be easy, because if you have a piece of real estate that your family, bought for, $10,000 30 years ago, and now it's worth $1 million, bingo, you just were able to demonstrate where the money came from. It came from the increase of value of the property. Very often, there might be the family will get a mortgage on the property or something like that, and then use the funds from the mortgage of the property to fund the EB5 project. There can be a family business, or they're in any business, and the business has a value. You can take a loan off of the business. Of course, you have to show the legitimacy of the business. If you make a lot of money from a business, you can demonstrate that given your income, you're able to save so much money, and that explains why you have $1 million investment account. And then you maybe invested in Amazon when it was $1.50, and now it's worth $1 million. So you have to justify where the money came from. As I said, real estate's number one. Money related to business ownership or income is also very popular. Investments, as I said. Now, for students, to the extent that most of the people watching here are students, they generally don't have real estate businesses investment accounts that have $1 million in it, but their families often do. And so what happens is the uncle, aunt, mom, dad, whoever the family member is, will gift the money. Maybe it's the money from the real estate, maybe it's the money from the business, but they'll gift the money to the EB5 applicant, and then the EB5 applicant uses that money to make the investment, and that's perfectly fine. We actually draft a gift letter and to demonstrate that it's a gift. Inheritance, that is a nice way to find the money. Loans we've sometimes used, but that gets a little complicated, because if somebody loans you $1 million, a family member, or maybe they loan you the $1 million off of the collateral of your house. So instead of getting a bank mortgage, you have a family member do it. And we've had some cases like this. We then have to show the legitimacy of the funds from the family member. We have to demonstrate how that family member came up with that money. And a problem that we have in the Philippines, and it's the same problem that we have in Vietnam as well, is that people aren't real great about sourcing their funds, or a lot of people have safes with a whole lot of money in it and not a lot of good paperwork about where that money came from. And what we typically do when we start the process in that stage one, in that slide that I showed you before on the timeline, we will sit down with the family and talk about where their wealth is and try to figure out the best story that USCIS, the U.S. government, will buy, basically, in terms of the legitimacy of the funds. You made so much money and so forth. Not just that the money appears one day. The money doesn't have to be in the Philippines. It doesn't have to be in the United States. It can be anywhere. We just have to do the source of funds. When the money's in the U.S., I love it, because the U.S., generally, if you have money in a bank or an investment account or whatever, it's really easy to trace, because in the U.S., transactions tend to be paper heavy and easily traced. So the money's in the U.S., all the better. If the money's in the Philippines, that's fine too. It's just a matter of working with your attorney, verifying the source of funds, and then moving on from there. And that's the process. Nicely.
All right. All right. So thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. Hopefully our viewers are now inspired even more, knowing that it's easier now, especially with your help in a potential partnership in the future. So again, a gentle reminder to all of our viewers, if you have any questions, concerns, comments, or clarifications, please do not hesitate to send your questions down below in the comments sections of the social media platforms that you guys are watching. All right, so now we get into the more to the better side of the webinar, wherein you probably have already chosen or decided that I feel like I want to learn more about it, or to maybe even find the best project for me. So now maybe we can talk about how does one pick the right EB5 project. So going back, maybe Sir Marko, would you like to explain how one person can really pick the right EB5 project and describe the due diligence process of it all?
I will be happy to. I think at this point I want to say that the funding, the source of funds that Eliot covered is probably the most significant, the most important thing that the immigration attorney does in the entire EB5 application process. For the broker-dealer, financial advisor, which is what I am, my company, is the picking of the right project is. So I guess this is where you should pay the most attention to our discussion, because we're talking about a lot of money here. We're talking about what used to be $500,000, right now $900,000, with admin fees and attorney fees and filing fees. We're talking about money coming into almost $1 million. So you have to be careful. You have to be careful into where you are investing, why you are picking the project you are picking, and what are the pros and cons. what questions really you should be asking before you select the project you're going to select. So the first thing that we look at, which we believe is really the heart of the thing of the selection, is the track record of the regional center and the developer. You see, when you get the money, you're investing it with a regional center, and this regional center better have experience of 526 approvals, green cards, hopefully the fact that they've been around and they actually paid many back investors. They should be able to, by now, for a program that is 30 years old, give you some confidence that they know what they're doing. At the same time, the regional center needs to work with a developer, because the developer is the one who's going to create the jobs. So they need to own land, the money that you've given to the regional center, to the developer. If the developer cannot pay back the regional center, then for all practical purposes, you will lose your money. Therefore, not only do you have to be concerned about the track record of the regional center, but also the developer, who might be, as Eliot mentioned before, building a hotel or a condo or some kind of a real estate project. So once you cover that, then you want to look at the documentation. $900,000 is what goes into what we defined before a targeted employment area. And one thing that we need to be careful about is that what an area could be a targeted employment area 1 year, but then it might not be another year. So just before you invest the money, you need to make sure that the TA authorization letter is up to date, that they have been certified, recertified, that the area you're planning to invest in is in fact a TEA. Because if it is not, then you're obviously invested less money than you should have. Like in this case, you should have invested 1.8 million as opposed to 900,000, and that will be a problem. Nobody is expecting that your application will be denied, especially if you have a good lawyer like SKT, Eliot's firm, and if you've hired us and we're really looking into all the documentations. Chances are very good that neither from source of funds standpoint nor the project's failure standpoint, your I-526 will be denied. But our job is to look at the endpoints, to look at the doomsday scenario. What if your 526 does get denied? It can happen. Not expecting it does not mean that it's not going to happen. What if it does happen? So you need an ironclad letter from the regional center that spells out clearly that you will get your money back, investment back, if your I-526 is denied. It's very important that you have this letter, and if it's not in the letter form, that it is in the private placement memorandum, and we will obviously highlight to you where in the PPM it is. The other thing that you need to make sure is that there are no excuses for why the building did not get completed. So the developer has to give you a building completion letter, a guarantee letter. Now you might say, what if COVID continues? Obviously, that's something that we understand, that COVID could create delays, but COVID is not a reason why a project that started should not be finished. So you want an ironclad, again, a building completion guarantee. The fourth one that we're mentioning here is something that is very rare. In most projects, we do not have it, is where the developer who takes the money, who borrows the money from the regional center, gives their corporate guarantee that they will make sure to pay this back. So obviously, if your transaction, if the deal that you're investing in has this kind of guarantee, that's obviously worth a lot. we can go into more detail. That if you like to discuss this with us, you can send us a message here privately. There are many other due diligence questions that you should be asking, and you probably are wondering what they are. All you got to do is visit our website, americaeb5visa.com, EB5 due diligence. You will see there questions about the regional center, questions about the project, questions about your own situation. All of that is spelled out in our website, and we strongly encourage you to look at those, get familiarized with those. And so when we do show you, if you do decide to go forward with this, and you do decide to invest in a project, that you do ask those questions, because we have the obligation to give you the answers. And last but not least, this is a federal program. So a lot of people might be wondering, if they invest in a New York project, can they live in Los Angeles? Or if they invest in a Los Angeles project, can they live in New York? And the answer is yes. The answer is the location of the project does not matter as long as it's in the United States or territories. It can be in Puerto Rico, actually. It can be, as long as it's a U.S. Location, then you can live anywhere you choose. Thank you, Ashley.
All right, so thank you for that. So I think that's another advantage for taking on EB5 visa program. All right. So you have mentioned a lot of the investment selection processes and what all the people can expect with in terms of being an investor and everything like that. But is there such thing as retrogression? Just in case that our viewers would want to be an investor sometimes, or would there be anything that has to do with retrogression that they have to understand or be knowledgeable about in the coming future or in the foreseeable future, even now that we're in the COVID pandemic? Yes. So is there anything like that that we have to look after?
The bottom line is you don't have to worry about retrogression. I'll tell you briefly what it is. There are country caps for how many visas, and it's a little bit complicated now how it works, but just understand there are country caps in terms of how many EB5 visas can be given to any one country. When we started this in our firm in Vietnam about 6 or so years ago, there was no retrogression in Vietnam, and we were getting visas issued. Remember that timeline from the time we applied for the person, we were getting their temporary green cards, within 2 years, maybe less, maybe more, but about 2 years. Then the program has become so popular now in China and Vietnam. From the time that you apply, if you're in China, the prediction is if you apply today, you're not going to get your temporary green card for 10 to 13 years. If you're in Vietnam and you apply today, you're not going to get your green card, your temporary green card, for maybe 6 years. But because you all are from the Philippines, you don't have to worry about that. And I don't think you're going to have to worry about it anytime soon, because very few people in the Philippines are doing EB5. Well, that's one reason that we're talking about it. When I've given these talks before, prior to COVID, when it was live, it always impressed me how sophisticated the knowledge of Filipinos were on U.S. immigration issues. They knew the F visas and the J visas and, all the different visa categories. Never heard of EB5. And I had a number of people come up to me and say, you mean all I have to do is write a check and I get a green card in a couple of years? And it's like, yeah, that's kind of what the program is. And because I think of the lack of information, and certainly among families that can afford to do this, but Philippines has a lot of those, and it is the easiest way to get a green card. I just think for whatever reason, it has not been that popular here, nowhere near retrogression. China and Vietnam currently have retrogression. The next one up is India, and then I think Brazil. When they have the list of the countries of EB5, Philippines gets put in the other category. It doesn't even get its category of there are so few at this point. But we're here to change that. Back to you, I think.
Thank you so much for that. So now that we know that the Philippines isn't in retrogression and it's easier to file applications now, I'm sure that a lot of our watchers or a lot of our viewers should hopefully are now inspired to now check out the EB5 program. But going back to the topic of investment amount, I remember we were talking about how it was from 500,000 to 900,000, if I'm not mistaken. So now is there a chance to increase again in the foreseeable future? Is there a chance that it will go down? Should investors wait and see, or what is the proper decision making here in this process with regards to that type of amount requirement?
Very, very good question, Icy. Thank you. Well, I can say that the increase, for whatever it's worth, that happened last year in November, there was a promise that went with it that for 5 years they're not going to touch us. So there is a guarantee, shall we say, that for the next 4 years, I guess now, because it's been a year that it increased, that the number is not going to change. It's not going to go up. The question in everybody's mind is, what if it, is there a possibility it might go down? There was actually a Politico article in the spring this year that made a big splash, and they attributed to one of the senators, Senator Lindsey Graham, I think, that allegedly said that they were thinking of halving the number from 900 to 450, and the number of visas from 10,000 to like some number like 70,000 or something, if I remember correctly. Soon after that article that came in Politico, it was denied. It was basically said that the senator himself said, I never said that, and the expectation by and large in the marketplace is that there is not going to be a decrease in the number. It has already increased. It was already for 30 years the same number, and so now that it has increased, the expectation is that it won't come down. Of course, nobody has the crystal ball. We're going into a new administrative regime. We're going to a, shall we say, a more friendly, immigration-friendly regime. So there could always be some kind of a revision, but most likely, if you were to ask Isley my professional opinion, it's not going down. Yep. Back to you.
All right, so thank you for that. So glad to know that all throughout this webinar, we've just been talking about the good things, and there's been so many advantages and so many plus points with applying for this type of visa. So again, watchers, if you have any questions or concerned comments, feel free to use the comment section down below in the social media platform that you're using, especially if you want some more questions about the advantages of this EB5 visa program. All right, so now let's take on more of the watchers there in the United States right now, our fellow Filipinos there in the US, or here in the Philippines, we call them our kababayans. So that's a Filipino term we call our fellow Filipinos. So especially for those students who have the F1 student visa program, if I'm not mistaken, do they still have to go back to the Philippines before they are eligible to apply again and go back to the US as they want more job opportunities and all of those benefits that we have mentioned in the previous part of the webinar? Yes.
Okay, I'll take that. This is important to a lot of the people watching this because, the organizations that are sponsoring this, a lot of you out there are going to be students, maybe in the US, maybe thinking about going to the US. And the way it has traditionally happened up until the last probably 4 years or so, is you'd come to the United States on your F1 student visa. At the end of your program, you'd get your degree, you'd go off to OPT, optional practical training, which is a job related to your degree, and you'd have 12 months to do kind of an on-the-job training. If you were in certain areas, STEM areas, you'd get an extra 24 months. And then at the end of OPT, it used to be you would apply for an H-1B work visa. But you can't count on that anymore. Next slide. The problem with the H-1B, there we go, is it's extremely popular. There were last year 300,000 applicants for 65,000 positions. In the prior administration under Obama, there was talk about increasing the number of positions. It never got passed, and Trump really dislikes H-1B. Trump believes it's taking away American jobs. And so he's done a whole bunch of things to make H-1Bs very, very difficult to get. He signed the Buy America, Hire American executive order, which basically makes a almost makes a presumption that if you apply for an H-1B, the presumption is that you should be denied, and you have to overcome the presumption that it should be something that's granted. He also just a couple of weeks ago increased the salary levels of H-1Bs. So if you are graduating, you finish your OPT, and you have a company that wants to hire you, they now have to hire you at a very high salary. It may even be cheaper for them to hire an American. And so the whole goal of this was to sort of gut the H-1B program, which, I think he's kind of successfully done. Next slide. The thing about the EB5 is that if you have the resources to do it, and you apply for your EB5, just before you start college or when you've started college, by the time you finish, you'll have your green card. You can work wherever you want. You don't have to worry about any of this stuff, and you can stay in America forever. So you, without the EB5 option today, if you're a foreign student and say you can't afford this, in all likelihood, you're going to end up having to go back to your home country unless things change dramatically in the H-1B arena. Now, maybe with President Biden, it will change, but that's the regime that we're in. But right now, this is the lay of the land. You do not have to return to the Philippines to apply for a EB5. You can stay here. We have many applicants of our clients who are students. The money is gifted to them from a relative. They study in the United States. There are, for example, medical schools. We have a client right now who wants to go to medical school, and there are some medical schools that will only accept green card holders. And so she's about to get her green card, and when she does, she'll apply to medical school so she can go to a U.S. medical school. Not true of all medical schools, but some require that you be a resident. And I think that's it. Back to Isley.
All right, so thank you for that. So hopefully for our fellow kababayans there, our fellow Filipinos in the United States, hopefully this has been a very insightful question for all of you, so you don't have to go back. If you do have applied for this EB5 visa early on into your college lives. So lastly, so the next question would be more of a technical question of sorts. So will there ever be a requirement of an investment to be an at-risk investment? So this is a very technical term. Hopefully you all can shed light onto it. And of course, what can it mean? What does it really mean to be at risk? Or is there any way that investors can mitigate this type of at-risk investment?
That it cannot be a fixed income investment. That's all that it means. That it cannot be debt investment. It has to be equity-like. So therefore, the regional centers go through a lot of pain in terms of creating a special purpose company that is called a NewCo, a newly created enterprise. And that is the one who actually makes the loan to the developer's special purpose company, which is the job creating entity. For all practical purposes, all that means is that, as I said, it cannot be fixed income. There was actually an interesting legal case that was won maybe a month and a half ago, where part of this was actually challenged at court. And the idea was that what if an investor filed this petition, and after the conditional green card period, the attorney went in and applied for removal of the conditions. If you recall, we call that the 829 application. In that scenario, would the regional center have the obligation to pay back the money? And believe it or not, the court ruled that the term at risk is not upset if the regional center is actually obligated to pay that back, as long as they have the money. So in other words, if the project goes bust, hopefully that's not going to be the case. If you decide to do this and you work with us, you pick the right project, so the project does create the jobs and is successful. But there is always the possibility that the project might not be successful. So as long as there is that risk that the developer will not be able to pay back, and therefore the regional center will not have any money to pay you back, that is enough for the at risk. But if they do have the money, they cannot withhold the money. So that it was actually an interesting case. We can elaborate that, of course, privately if you want to get in touch with us. That's about at risk. So
let me chime in with something, just to add something there, Marko. To make it really clear, I think that at risk does not mean risky. At risk means it has to be a real investment. And you work with Marko, he will direct you toward really solid regional centers that have done, $1 billion worth of business, have 100% success rate, given everybody their money back. And it's not really risky, even though it's technically at risk. You can invest in a dollar stock, and that would be risky. If you invest $100,000 in a dollar stock, it can go down to zero and you've lost all your money. On the same stock market, you can invest in Apple, and that's still at risk. Both of them are equally at risk, but the Apple investment's not terribly risky. You'll get your money back. Probably goes up, and as opposed to the dollar stocks. So I think you shouldn't be frightened by what you'll see when you start Googling all this stuff, that the investment has to be an at-risk investment. It simply means it needs to be a true investment, like an investment in Apple, but it doesn't mean that it's a risky investment. And in fact, you're working with somebody like Marko, he will ensure that it's not a risky investment. And some of these regional centers are huge, $1 billion plus operations that have built hotels, all over the country, and apartment houses and so forth. You're just, a little investment in this big thing. So anyway, that's my 2 cents about at risk.
All right, so thank you for that. I'm sure a lot of our watchers, all of our viewers, especially those who are looking into really getting into a green card, an EB5 visa, are now really inspired into, partnering up with everybody here in this webinar today. Everybody can find their contact numbers on the screen. So if you have any more questions, concerns, you can always check out their websites and feel free to send them a message through their emails and or contact details. So maybe we can answer a few questions from the audience. So again, audience members, audience watchers, if you have any questions in mind, feel free to send in a comment in the comment section down below with your question. And of course, we will be reading out here in the live stream right now. So actually, we do have one question coming from one of our YouTube watchers. So hello, Anonalim, good morning. Hopefully you're having a great day right now. So her question is actually towards employment. So she's been hearing stories from other people, especially in the US, that are seeking employment right now. So she mentions that other people seeking employment, if you're not a citizen, it is hard to finally get a job because there's more work to be done. If we do apply for the EB5 visa, will that still be the case of getting a hard time finding for jobs, or will it be easier for us now that we have the EB5 visa program?
I don't know who wants to take that, but from an employment perspective, whether you are a green card holder, which is a resident of the United States, or a citizen of the United States, it should not disadvantage you in terms of a job. If I'm going for a job as a citizen or a green card holder, it should make no difference. Does anybody disagree with that?
Well, I actually want to.
I don't disagree. I think that's actually quite accurate. Sorry, go ahead,
I
Marko.
actually want to say that that's for sure, Eliot. But I think maybe she's talking about coming in here as a student, and like the good old days, like yours truly. Would you be able to find a job without a green card nowadays? And I think you covered that very well during the session today. Even if a company wants to hire you, because the H-1B is subject to lottery, the companies, frankly, are discouraged to wait for that, only to find that it's 20-30% probability that they'll be able to have you. But I echo exactly the same sentiment, that if you actually do get the green card, you will not be in any disadvantage, compared with somebody that is a citizen.
And I would guess that a lot of states like California probably have laws that actually prevent you from discriminating against residents versus citizens. So I don't think an employer would be allowed to use that status to discriminate against somebody in terms of giving them a job. So I think it really is the thing. If you don't have the green card, then, right, as Marko was just saying, you may not be able to work at all. But in the United States, yeah,
and it might. I was just going to say it might actually be a bit of an advantage. I mean, to the point that it might be something you want to actually add to your resume, just to say that you have an EB5 visa that proves that you're able to work in the U.S. without having any issues, without having to worry about like the H1 visa and all that. So this would actually be something I think you could actually add to your resume to make employers feel comfortable in hiring you.
Any more questions, Isleigh?
All right. So thank you for answering her question. Hopefully, Winona Lim, we got to answer your question about employment. So currently, right now, there's no questions. But again, if you have any more questions, please feel free to comment it down the comment section in your social media platform. So while waiting for any questions that are to be raised, maybe there's someone cramming their question. Maybe you would have, any of our guest speakers would like to promote anything with what they have right now. This is your time to promote if you have anything to mention or anything with regards to the webinar topic. So yes.
I don't have anything to promote, but just to emphasize, up on your screen right now, I would take down these numbers and email addresses, and feel free to contact us. It's not bothering any of us. We all love to hear from anybody who is participating or listening to this webinar. And feel free to ask any questions. You may be a little shy to type them out right now and have us all discuss it openly. Obviously, getting your name. But if you want to privately ask us anything, feel free.
And I will just add one quick thing that you would have to use my email address that is listed there under my name. That Philippines phone number is not valid right now. So I'm in the U.S. using my U.S. number. So anyway, email would be better for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to mention that in my number there, you see a U.S. number. You can use that as a WhatsApp. So of course the email is fine, and the U.S. number is valid with a WhatsApp. So whether you want to text us or call us or email us, we would love to hear from you.
Uh, I'd also like to ask, so for my fellow kababayans who are very interested into this, you may reach me through Viber. Also, a lot of Filipinos use Viber, so you may use my Philippines number and send me a message through Viber if you have questions or concerns about this.
And I just may add that the number that's on there is actually my office number for my California office. My WhatsApp, Viber, cell number, I'll just give it. It's +1 310 619 5455. And of course, you can email.
All right, so thank you for that. Hopefully, our watchers have taken down those notes of not just your contact numbers, but everything here in the webinar. I'm sure that a lot of people are enlightened. So for now, there's no comments or queries or comments or questions with regards to our topic. So hopefully, everybody's been enlightened. And of course, again, we are extending our contact info. You can email any of them, text any of them, WhatsApp, Viber, and of course, you can also message the ASEAN Youth Organization, ESME.ph, or the Rotaract of Alabang Madrigal Park. So if there's no any further questions, I would just like to mention that for everyone who has attended this webinar, you can all get a digital certificate for your attendance. Just visit our site at www.sme.ph or click the link that we have posted in the comment section below. So to Sir Marko, Sir Eliot, Sir Rick, and Miss Pam, thank you so much for spending a lot of your time here, especially knowing that every one of you is a bit busy right now in terms of work and personal obligations and everything like that. So I just want to extend the gratitude that we have, not just for here in the partner organizations such as ASEAN Youth, ESME, and Rotaract, but of course the entire Philippines, especially for our watchers who have also watched and enlightened here today. So again, to our watchers, thank you so much for taking the time also from your schedules to watch our webinar for today. So again, this webinar is in partnership with the ASEAN Youth Organization, an ASEAN approved not-profit organization that spreads awareness of ASEAN to over 200 million young people in the Southeast Asia. And of course, this webinar is also brought to you by the Rotaract Club of Alabang Madrigal Business Park. Lastly, I would like to invite everyone who wants to learn more and increase their knowledge and skills. Just visit our website at www.sme.ph. We offer a wide range of masterclass courses, those of which you can enroll in base of whatever is relevant to your passion, career, and interest. So again, I am Nicole D, your chairperson for IO administrative chairperson for the Philippines chapter, and of course a youth leader as well. And here I am saying goodbye to you all. So good morning, good evening, or good afternoon to any of you here watching us today. So thank you again, everybody.